Good afternoon, everyone. Today we're going to talk about how to achieve compliance with data loss prevention, as compliance is a big topic in most businesses these days, especially when it comes to PCI and HIPAA. So we're gonna go into just a brief presentation, and then we'll log in and start getting everything set up on our firewall and show you guys step by step what you need to do. So compliance generally is defined by federal compliance standards in the United States. Most compliances are driven from the federal level. They affect or even dictate compliances at the state, county, city, and municipal level, particularly for HIPAA and CGIS, which is Criminal Justice Information System, and certain compliances controlled by the SEC. Other compliances are derived and enforced by industry organizations like PCI, which is the council that sets, decides, and enforces standardization on the payment card industry. One fact is true in all cases, though: protection of network, endpoint, and data, PII or EPHI, several other acronyms, is absolutely the very first thing for information security spelled out in each compliance is a firewall. The next thing spelled out is a plan to protect data and audit transactions. So we'll take a look at the PCI standard, just a short checklist, goals of each of the goals for the PCI DSS requirements. Very first thing is build and maintain a secure network. Changing password defaults, taking steps to protect cardholder data, maintaining the vulnerability management of the program, implement strong access control measures, monitor and test networks, and then maintain an information security policy. So data loss prevention kind of falls in a couple of those categories. One of them is protecting cardholder data. The other one, it would fall in place under maintain an information security policy. Those are generally, in the past, have been derived as written rules and policies that employees should be trained on. However, with data loss prevention, we have the ability to put some automation in place to prevent the loss, accidental loss primarily, of that important personally identifiable information. Just a few things about data loss prevention with WatchGuard. DLP requires FireWare OS 11.8 or higher and a data loss prevention subscription. You should note that data loss prevention is not part of the UTM package. It is a third piece that is purchased, and it is an extra license that goes into the UTM package. The data loss prevention service enables you to detect, monitor, and prevent the accidental or unauthorized transmission of confidential information. DLP service includes built-in auditing sensors that you can use to monitor compliance with HIPAA or PCI. DLP uses content control rules to identify sensitive information. DLP identifies content that matches enabled DLP control rules, and that content is treated as a DLP violation, not just for the management, but also for the logging of those violations. You can choose what action you want the WatchGuard device to take in the event of a DLP violation in both email and non-email traffic. You can also configure DLP to take different actions based on the source and destination of the traffic. We'll get into that a little more when we get into the deployment and provisioning. Just a few more notes. Firebox T10, the XTM 2, 3, and 5 series use a standard optimized set of DLP content control rules, and all other devices use a full enterprise set. So what that means essentially is for the T10, the XTM 2, 3, and 5 series, those rule sets are scaled down. There's a number of text extraction and file types that DLP will monitor, including HTML, the different Office suites out there, including Microsoft. email messages and text files, and Adobe PDF and RTF. DLP is a subscription service. To enable DLP on your WatchGuard device, you must get a Firebox feature key, manually add or remove a feature key, and then configure data loss prevention. Now, data loss prevention is going to work on proxy policies, including SMTP, FTP, HTTP, and HTTPS proxies. To use the HTTPS proxy, you must enable deep packet inspection. If Gateway Antivirus and DLP are both enabled on the same policy, the Gateway Antivirus scan action takes precedence over the DLP action. DLP scans different types of traffic according to which proxy you use with it. SMTP proxy, DLP scans content and email messages and attachments. For HTTP and TTPS proxy, DLP scans posts from both of those protocols. For the FTP proxy, DLP scans content and uploaded files. So we're gonna make a fictitious company here, the Unified Medical Group. I chose a medical group because they have requirements in both HIPAA and PCI compliance. So it afforded us an opportunity to set up the appropriate rules to do a good demo. So we'll talk just a little bit about their needs and requirements for the network, and then we'll get into the firewall and set this thing up. So introducing the Unified Medical Group, it's a fictitious customer, as I stated. They require both HIPAA and PCI compliance, HIPAA for their electronic health records and PCI for their patient financial records. They have 3 networks: an administration office, a main hospital, and a data center that houses all the group's on-premise servers. They have 7 main groups in their Active Directory, including a mobile group comprised of home healthcare workers. This group makes use of the explicit proxy, which will be coming up in FireWare version 11.11, soon to be released. It's currently in beta. UMG requires the following in order to maintain PCI and HIPAA compliance. They have to employ deep packet inspection on ingress and egress proxy policies. They must restrict exterior access by all departments except IT. They employ multi-category web blocking for malicious sites, ingress and egress IPS, gateway antivirus and APT scanning, and inter-network IPS scanning. Authentication-based access to all network elements with audit trails. Physical and logical segregation of all networks with authentication-based access only. They have branch office VPN with intrusion prevention, APT, DPI on all ingress and egress traffic. App control on all streaming media, social media, peer-to-peer and external file collaboration sites such as Dropbox, Box, and OneDrive, and etc. Data loss prevention on all groups with the following settings: medical members, which includes the physicians and nurses, all HIPAA, PII info scanned, and with the exception of emails to pharma@umg.hospital.com, which is where they would send prescriptions for the pharmacy. Administration would be scanned for classified documents. Admittance would be scanned for PII and financial documents. IT would be scanned in all categories. Mobile users would be scanned for all HIPAA and PII, pharmacy for all categories, and data entry for all categories. Okay, so let's get into the Firebox and see what we can do to make this happen. Give me just 1 second, and we'll switch over. So we're going to use the WatchGuard System Manager to do this programming. You can also do the same thing through the web UI. However, I just prefer to use the WatchGuard System Manager. As you take a look, you see that we've got all of our TCP and UDP open policies disabled and removed. We've put in proxy settings for SMTP, FTP, HTTP, HTTPS. We have a packet filter for Citrix. We have an explicit proxy for our exterior traffic coming back in that would enable our outside users to still make use of the filters and data loss prevention services of the firewall. We have WatchGuard authentication set up for Active Directory. We also have the pack file download, which is a new feature for the explicit proxy. We've got a DNS proxy set up going to internal DNS servers on a 10 series IP address. We have a SQL Server database. We also have a SIP proxy for the phone system internally that goes to a 10 series server for authentication there. Then we have our WatchGuard management and our any IT access for the IT team. As you can see, all proxies are built not on the different host ports, but they're built on the groups through Active Directory. So first things first, we've went in, we've checked, everything looks good. We've got everything programmed up and ready to go. So we're going to go over here to data loss prevention. We'll click on that. And as you can see, there's two sensors that are pre-built. First thing we need to do is click on Enable Data Loss Prevention. Now, for best practices, the way that I do this is I never use the PCI default sensors because you can build a couple of different kinds of sensors. You can either clone one of these pre-built sensors, and it'll come in here and build it out for you, and it's ready to go. And then all you have to do is go in and assign it to the proxy that you would want to assign it to, or you can go in and build one from scratch simply by adding. And so we're going to build that one first, and we're going to say PCI. We'll name it PCI for finance, and we'll attach this to the finance proxies. Let's push this through here, and we'll assign it to, as I said, HTTP for finance, and we'll assign it to the HTTPS for finance, and that will pretty well do it on that one. So when you look at the wizard, it's going to come up with a whole bunch of different PII for different countries because we sell to multinational companies and all over the world. So we can actually drill down just a little bit by doing the region, doing a drop down from all to USA. And I'll make this a little bit larger so we can see everything. And we can look at everything like bank routing numbers. So we want to take care of that. Confidential document markers, obviously we want to take care of that. Anything over here that would be marked as financial data, we would want to check off. And then personally identifiable information, employer identification numbers, ethnicity, national identification, postal addresses. Not too worried about resumes and CVs because I don't think they're going to have a lot of that in financial data. Telephone numbers, social security numbers, and then social security numbers without separators, and then social security numbers with qualifying terms. So that's what we want to scan for the financial department. So we have a couple of options here. When it's detected in an email, we have the options to allow, to lock, which locks the message content, to remove the message parts, which would allow a message to flow through. However, any information that was deemed in violation would be removed from the email. We can quarantine, which would hold the message on a quarantine server until it could be reviewed. We can deny the connection and notify the source. We can just drop the connection, or we can block and auto block the sender, which would disallow the sender from sending any future emails until IT has to handle that. Personally, I would just as soon remove the message parts and then let the message flow through. And what that'll do is it will let the sender and the receiver know that there was an issue and that needed to be addressed. When content is detected from non-email traffic, I would drop the connection immediately, because generally speaking, that means that the content's being uploaded either to FTP or, Dropbox or something like that. Anything that we could connect an HTTP or FTP connection to. So we're going to finish that up, and that is built and ready to go. And you can see here from the data loss prevention window that we have a user-defined sensor and the policies that it's assigned to. So we'll take a look here. Actually, I want to go back in and edit this. And what this does here is it says that on the mail action, it removes it. On the other action, on the non-mail action, it drops it. And we can set our sources. So for this particular policy, we've defined where traffic is coming from and where it's going to. Traffic could be coming from anyone that's authenticated to the finance group, and it will be going to the external connection. So we don't really need to define anything in here. However, we could go in and assign it to a particular email address or a range of email addresses, such as star, which is like an any key at umg.hospital.com, and we could say that anything coming from that email set of email addresses to any destination would be scanned. However, we're not going to do that in this case, because we just want to let it go from the naturally built policy source to the naturally built policy destination. We do have it set up for logging, so this will push all logs over to Dimension, so that we'll be able to get an audit trail and run historical data on any transactions that are going back and forth. So let's do one more of these. What we're going to basically do is we're going to do a HIPAA sensor, and we're going to clone this one. We'll drop this down and look at all the USA HIPAA settings. And this has got some pre-built stuff, like the Drug Enforcement Administration number, patient medical forms. It's also got a national provider identification number, protected health information related stuff, and then social security numbers with qualifying text or terms. I would also add social security numbers and social security numbers without separators, just to be safe, because you never know how that data is going to come across. Let's see here. I would also do Medicaid. We don't have to worry about Medicaid because this hospital is in Texas, where I'm located, even though it's fictitious. A Medicaid recipient for New York would be a good thing if you're up in the New York area. We don't have to worry about any financial information because we're assigning this to our medical team. So this would be a HIPAA. And we'll label this medical team. And then we'll take a look at any actions that we've got here. When content is detected in email, we want to remove the message parts. And when we see that it's non-email, we'll drop that connection. Now, we do want to make a change here, though, because what I want to do is I want to set up an email allowance that would allow the doctors to email prescriptions to the pharmacy. So we would set up star at medteam.hospital.com, and then for the destination, we would set up another email address, which would be pharma at umg.hospital.com. And what that will allow that to do is anything coming from someone with a medteam.hospital.com address would be able to send out an email to the pharma team without it kicking off a sensor and being a violation. Excuse me. So we'll save that, and so we've got that rule that would allow that to pass through. Hang on. Make a change right quick. On this, we're going to allow, and then we'll go here. And then we'll add another rule, which would be any at any, which will remove the message parts and we'll drop the connection immediately, so that will take care of anything else that is not that first rule. All right, so we've got that taken care of. One other thing, we don't have it assigned. Actually, for this piece, we need to go into the medical rules. So we'll click out of here, and we'll go over here to MedTeam policies and proxies, which will be this the medical teams here. We'll modify this policy, and in the HTTP client standard 1, we will open this up. And we'll take a look here at the data loss prevention, and we'll assign the HIPAA medical team data loss prevention sensor. And then we'll do the same thing for the HTTPS for the med team. So modify this policy. And then we'll go into the main DPI for the proxy action. And we'll set up that web blocker for that. Something I missed when I was doing the initial setup here. On the proxy action here, we will go into the data loss prevention. And this is already set up because it was set up on the HTTP policy. All right. That is how we set this up, set up data loss prevention across the board. We would go back and do that for each of the different policies that we have, as well as the FTP policy and the SMTP policy for external mail traffic. The mobile traffic would be a little bit different, but we're not going to get into that today. We're going to wait until that explicit proxy gets launched out on general production, and then we'll do something a little different and talk about DLP with the explicit proxy. So with that, we're gonna call this a wrap, and thank you everyone for joining us today, and I do appreciate your time. And with that, I'm going to turn it back over to Elaine.